Welcome to The Explainer. Every so often, a company pulls off a comeback for the ages. Today, we're talking about maybe the greatest one in tech history, AMD. We're going to break down how this former underdog became an absolute powerhouse, and most importantly, what it all means for you as an investor watching the AI space.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Because seriously, how did a company that was pretty much on life support just a decade ago become a central player in the biggest tech revolution of our lifetime? It's an incredible story, and the journey from there to here is just a masterclass in strategy.
So, the whole thing really kicked into high gear in 2014 when Dr. Lisa Su took over as CEO. She made one huge, clear bet: high performance computing. By 2017, the Zen architecture was the first real shot across the bow at Intel. And wow, did it pay off. Just look at that revenue growth, nearly 30% a year. But here's the real kicker for investors. By 2024, the story wasn't just about PCs anymore. The data center became the main engine, tying AMD's entire future directly to the AI explosion. All right, so pillar one. And what's so interesting here is that this comeback, it didn't even start with AI. Nope. It started by taking on the undisputed king of computer chips, Intel, and fighting them right in their own backyard. You gotta understand, for what felt like an eternity, the data center was Intel's kingdom. I mean, it was the engine room of the entire internet, and their Xeon chips were in everything. AMD's goal was simple, but incredibly ambitious: dismantle that monopoly, one server at a time. And I mean, just look at these numbers. They speak for themselves. In 2017, AMD was, well, they were a rounding error in this market. Barely even there. Flash forward to late 2024 and bam, their EPYC chips have ripped away nearly a quarter of the market from Intel. And this isn't just about bragging rights. These server chips are incredibly profitable, so every single point of market share is a huge boost to the bottom line. So how on earth did they do it? What was their secret? Well, it came down to this really brilliant idea called chiplet design. Think of it like this. Instead of trying to make one giant, perfect, and super expensive chip, which is the old way, AMD figured out how to use smaller, powerful, interconnected building blocks, kind of like high-tech Legos. It was cheaper, way more flexible, and meant fewer mistakes during manufacturing. This one idea was how David started beating Goliath on performance. Okay, so after proving they could take on Intel, AMD set its sights on an even bigger target. This brings us to the next and maybe most important chapter in their story: taking on the undisputed king of AI, Nvidia. Now, to go after Nvidia, AMD knew it couldn't just be about building faster hardware. The real war, the one that matters, is fought over software. For years, Nvidia's CUDA platform has been the gold standard, but it's a closed proprietary system. Think of it like Apple's iOS. AMD's counterattack is ROCm, which is an open-source alternative. The bet is that huge customers, like the big cloud providers, will eventually choose the freedom of an open system over being locked into Nvidia's very expensive walled garden. And the size of the prize they're fighting for is just mind-boggling. Management thinks this is a $400 billion market for AI chips by 2027. Just let that sink in for a second. If AMD can capture just 10% of that, just the 10th, they would literally double the size of their entire company today. The scale of this opportunity is just wow. Okay, but let's be real for a second. This is an uphill battle, a massive one. I mean, look at this. In early 2024, Nvidia wasn't just leading the market, they were the market with an insane 88% share. That's not a hill to climb, that's a mountain. But even with that huge lead, AMD's strategy is starting to pay off. They're landing the big fish. When you see names like Microsoft, Meta, and Oracle signing up, that's more than just a sale. That is a huge stamp of approval. For any investor, these logos are the best proof you can get that AMD is a real, credible alternative to Nvidia. So this whole transformation, it's not just a two-front war against Intel and Nvidia. It's much bigger than that. AMD has been fundamentally reshaping its entire business to be way more resilient and, well, diversified. And this chart really shows you everything you need to know. It's the story of the old AMD versus the new AMD. The old AMD, it was totally at the mercy of the PC and gaming markets, boom and bust. But the new AMD, totally different animal. Today, more than half of its business comes from the data center, a market tied to the long-term, steady growth of cloud and AI. For an investor, that means a much more stable and predictable road ahead.
And a huge piece of this new diversified puzzle was their acquisition of a company called Xilinx. This wasn't just about getting bigger, it was about getting smarter. It got them into totally new markets, things like automotive, industrial, and aerospace. These are industries with really long, stable product cycles and great profit margins. Another move to make AMD a more durable, all-weather company.
Okay, so the story sounds amazing, right? But as any investor knows, there's always a but. So what could go wrong here? What are the big risks you really need to keep on your radar? Really, the bear case, the argument against AMD, boils down to these four things. First, they're fighting that war on two fronts against absolute giants. Second, almost all of their manufacturing relies on one single partner, TSMC, which is based in Taiwan. That, of course, leads to risk number three, geopolitics. And finally, there's the valuation. The secret is out. The market knows this is a great story, and the stock is priced for perfection, which means there's very little room for error. And this table kind of lays it all out. Just look at the price-to-sales ratio. That's basically what the market is willing to pay for every single dollar of revenue a company makes. You can see AMD is way more expensive than Intel, but it's still trading at a bit of a discount compared to the AI king, Nvidia. The big takeaway here is that the stock isn't cheap. You're paying for near-flawless execution. So if you're an investor and you're tracking AMD, what should be on your dashboard? What are the critical numbers that will tell you if this whole grand plan is actually working out? Here's your cheat sheet. 4 things to watch like a hawk. First, data center revenue. That number has to keep growing and fast. Second, gross margin. That's a key measure of profitability. You want to see it stay above 50%. Third, you need to hear about those Instinct AI chip sales every quarter. Is that number going up? And finally, that server CPU market share. Are they holding their ground, or even better, still taking share from Intel? And so that brings us to the multi-billion-dollar question for anyone looking at AMD stock today. The turnaround has been absolutely phenomenal, no doubt about it. But is their massive bet on AI the beginning of an even greater triumph, or is all of that incredible future success already baked into the price?